The summer I was 10. The river outside our town glittered like a coin laid on a dark table. The morning began with the hum of heat rising from the road and the soft rustle of linen curtains. Our house, whitewashed and tired, held the day in its corners, warm air pooling in the kitchen like a patient, listening thing. Grandmother was already there, her hands moving with a calm economy that made the world feel simple and possible. The bread cooled on a wire rack. The crusts browned and whispering as they touched the plate. Sunlight pressed through the window, turning dust motes into pale stars that drifted in the beam of light across the timber floor. Outside, the cicadas kept time with a stubborn insistence, a chorus that felt both ancient and intimate, as if the land itself were leaning close to tell a secret. I spent those long days learning to notice small things, how the hedges kept their velvet green even in the heat, how the river wore a ribbon of silver at the edge of the willows, how grandmother's voice could soften the stubbornness in my stubborn heart. She sent me with a tin cup to fetch water from the well, then bid me sit with her on the back steps where the world felt slower, where time wore its soft, patient gloves. The scent of warmed earth and something sweet, grapes left to sun-dry on a screen, hung in the air, and the streets beyond our fence seemed a different country with their own rules and quiet laws. On the third afternoon, a small distressing thing happened that did not belong to the plan of a breezy holiday. A sparrow, bright-eyed and foolish with youth, had fallen from the sky and lay feebler than a leaf in a pond. Its wing trembled when it tried to move, and the tremor seemed as loud as a drum in the stillness. Grandmother bent to examine it with the careful tenderness that had kept a family together through storms and sparse winters. "We will not pretend this is not here," she said, almost to the bird as to a child. She spoke softly, a language that belonged only to patience, and she asked me to carry the little creature with both hands, to cradle it as if it were a fragile wish. I walked with the sparrow pressed between my palms toward the shed at the end of the yard, where a corner held jars and herbs and a lamp that never caught the dark completely. The world smelled of bottle-green glass and lavender, of old towels and the faint tang of iron in water. The bird's breath shuddered against my fingers, and I learned a new kind of listening, how to become quiet enough to hear the faint, frightened heartbeat in something so small. Grandmother laid a cool cloth on the bench, spoke of gentleness as if it were a balm for the world, and we made a little bed for the bird with a soft strip of linen. In those hours, I learned something about mercy that would travel with me long after the sparrow's fate was settled. We fed it warm milk with a drop of something sweet, not to deceive ourselves into thinking it would survive, but to give it a moment's comfort, as it did what creatures do in the wild when they cling to life. The breeze came through the open door and carried a scent of lilacs from a neighbour's garden, the river's murmur tangible beyond the yard, and the sound of distant laughter from the street where children still played baseball, unhindered by care, as if the day could hold every heart inside a single breath. That bird did not fly again that day, but it did something else for me. Grandmother lifted the lid of a large blue jar where we kept a few dried herbs for poultices and whispered, as if telling a secret to the wind, that sometimes mercy is the courage to let life pass through your fingers, rather than clinging to it for the sake of fear. The sparrow died in the quiet hours of the late afternoon, its body resting on a bed of soft grass near the shed, the world thinning around it to a small, profound truth. We laid it to rest with a handful of pebbles arranged in a circle, and grandmother spoke of the river's patience, how it would carry all stories to a new place, even the ones that never fully tread the shore again. It sounds solemn to say the moment changed me, but it did, in a way that stayed soft and ordinary. I began to see that care, small, steady, constant, is an art one learns in silence, not in grand declarations. I carried that lesson into the long years that followed, in the care with which I listened to friends who spoke in whispers of fear, in the way I watched children learn their own stubborn joys, in the patience I brought to the chalkboard when a student could not find the right word. It was not a blaze of heroism, but a thread that wove itself into the fabric of how I treated others and myself. The river, which looked like a coin when the sun lay heavy on it. Years passed, and the town changed its face with new paint and new stories, while the river kept its own patient rhythm. The willows, like old friends, leaning toward one another in a soft, conspiratorial hush. Now, in the gentler gravity of old age, I find that memory is less a map, and more a glow that travels with me in every room I enter. I can still hear the wooden boards of grandmother's kitchen, still smell the bread and the heat of the afternoon, still feel the rough grain of the bench beneath my hands, as if it could teach me to bear the ache of time with grace. The sparrow's small life taught me to measure life not by how loudly it announces itself, but by how steadily it sustains the quiet, the simple, the almost invisible acts of care. There is power in a life that moves slowly enough to notice the air on a whisker of wind, the way a door creaks at dusk, the way rain gathers on the edge of a dusty road. I have learned to thank the ordinary for its stubborn sweetness, to honor the memory that keeps me upright when the weight of years presses down. If love is the memory that refuses to fade, then mercy is the kindness that keeps one's heart open, even when the world asks for strength or distance. I am not afraid to admit I have known both, and I am grateful that the memory of that summer, the river's silver coin, grandmother's patient hands, the small bird's quiet surrender, taught me how to keep loving anyway. So I am left with a softer morning, a longer listening, and a heart that knows how to linger. Time moves with a quiet insistence, but meaning does not leave its pockets. It grows like a seed in the dark, seeking light through patience, through mercy, through the steady rhythm of a life that tries, every day, to be gentle. And for that I am grateful, for the river's ever return, for the old kitchen's warmth, for the slow, unshowy acts of care that stitch a life together. If there is wisdom in aging, it is this. To remember is to return to kindness, to return again and again, with the soft touch of a hand and the quiet courage to keep listening.